Hi, folks. I'm Michael Jonas at CommonWealth Magazine, and I'm talking today with Evan Falchuk, a candidate for governor in our election here in Massachusetts. Earlier this week, Evan was the candidate of the United Independent Party, and I think it's fair to say he's the winningest loser from Tuesday's election because, along with being in the mix in the race for governor to win the seat, his party had the other aim of trying to win at least 3% of the vote in Massachusetts, which is the hurdle they need to clear to establish party status for elections going forward. And you certainly pulled that off, Evan. And you're a real party now. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a big accomplishment.
And what do you think? Sort of was the key to that? We had three independent candidates or candidates not from major parties running, and your campaign is clearly the one that gained some traction. You got a little over 3% of the vote, and the others kind of were even sort of not even cracking 1%. What was the message that you brought that seemed to resonate with at least a pocket of voters?
Yeah, it's what we've been talking about all along, which is the idea that we needed to have a new framework, a new structure, a new party, so that we could start to elect a lot of new smart people that aren't tied to the political establishment. And we hear this happening all around the country, certainly here in Massachusetts, where people say, I don't feel like the system is representing me anymore. The huge influence of money in this election and in elections generally has been helping drive down voter turnout, and it's been increasing the influence of these interests that don't really have the best interests of the people of Massachusetts at heart. So going out there and saying, this is what we're doing, this is what we stand for. We ran a very positive campaign. People that saw our ads didn't see the usual ads that you saw in the campaign were the one in color with the candidate running or wearing safety goggles, or the one in black and white where you hear about how horrible the candidate is.
Right.
These are scientifically proven ways to drive down voter turnout, to get people to be dispirited about politics and cynical, and that allows people to really get away with a democracy in which a majority of our legislators are running unopposed, and where people don't feel like the system's representing them, and yet people don't see a way to run and to challenge it. So founding the United Independent Party and telling people, look, you can play a part in making history and changing the system and providing that framework, that really grabbed people's attention, and that was really the secret to what we were able to succeed at.
Mm-hmm. And the voters you got were clearly disaffected from the two major parties and their candidates. But I also wonder about sort of the message and the strategy going forward. Yours, in some ways, is really kind of an insurgent centrist party. You're kind of a passionate moderate, I guess. If I know you kind of try to reject the usual left-right way of thinking about politics, but a lot of your stands don't fall necessarily always consistently to what we think of as the left or the right. And so I just wonder if you is that tricky going forward, as opposed to other third parties that have often appealed to people who feel like they're sort of further to the right or the left of the main parties?
That's been the failings of those parties, and I think it's interesting that those other parties, like for example Green Rainbow, which I respect those guys, but that's a national party that was trying to put down roots here in Massachusetts for years, and they've sort of been up and down, and we built this from nothing. I mean, we started from scratch. We had 56 people, friends, colleagues, others who felt like we wanted to try to do something to change our politics, and we did something uniquely American, which is that we organized for political change. And yeah, you know what? My positions and the positions of people that are supporting this campaign, they don't fit neatly into these boxes and buckets. I've been called everything from you had people like Howie Carr calling me essentially a communist, to people saying, and I was an invited speaker to the Libertarian State Convention. There's people that, as you said, you call me a moderate. It really all depends on what's the issue. And this is what's ended up happening in our politics, is that we've become so fixated on trying to put people in boxes for shorthand for what it is that they represent. The candidates themselves don't even bother to actually take positions anymore, because they can just be labeled in a certain way. When the Boston Globe, I thought it was sort of one of the heights of this kind of mentality when they endorsed Charlie Baker. There wasn't anything in there really about his policy positions, but there was a whole chunk about how he had learned to be more warm and how that was important. And I thought, gee, the founders of our country would probably be really interested to find that in our democracy we had decided that warmth was a new characteristic that was important for to hold office. And it has become not about substance or policy.
And where do you think in this race, where did the major party candidates, sort of really punt and come up empty when it came to, a couple of the what you would consider really pressing issues facing the state? Because again, I think one criticism, or I sort of observed, is I thought they were also both kind of moderating positions that their parties are known for, and moving toward the middle. So you might think that that the three of you all kind of met somewhere in the middle, but I get the sense that you don't feel that way, and you don't feel like they really took on the issues of the day.
No, they didn't. And I say this as someone who sat in forum after forum after forum with those candidates, and I really couldn't give you a clear-cut position on where either of them stand on many important issues. The cost of living being the biggest one, which is driven by healthcare costs, which I spent a lot of time talking about. Fundamentally, healthcare costs being driven by groups like Partners, consolidating hospitals and raising prices. Charlie had a hand in that back when he was with Governor Weld at HHS, and Martha, of course, does with what has happened with South Shore Hospital and Hallmark Health Systems. But you didn't hear them talk about that issue at all, and it's the number one driver of cost for businesses and for people. When we did talk about healthcare, you heard it discussed certainly in the debates that I was not in. They talked about Charlie's salary at Harvard Pilgrim back in the 1990s. That's not healthcare. I mean, I guess he worked at a healthcare company, but that's not anything to do with the issues that people face. So I couldn't tell you where either of them stand on these issues, other than the fact that it's going to probably be more of the same. It is what dispirits voters, because if you're paying a higher insurance premium than ever as a business person or as a voter, a family, if your deductible keeps going up, if you got a bill for $600 for an x-ray, you don't understand why that is, and you want to look to the candidates for statewide office and say, tell me what's going on exactly and what's your vision for the future, and what you get is, well, I don't have an answer for that, but I got to tell you, I think you should play this thing for Halloween. Or, I don't have an answer to that, but let me tell you about this time when I cried, or how quickly I pay off my credit card bills. It doesn't speak to people's needs, and what you end up having is people saying, well, I think this is vaguely where they stand. They're kind of moderate on this and kind of this on that, and that's what's missing. So what has inspired voters with what we're doing with the United Independent Party is the fact that we're willing to lay it out there and say, this is what it is, this is what it's about. You can disagree, but at least you know what it is.
Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about the plans going forward. You and I were exchanging some tweets on Election Day, and I tossed out this question of whether you were going to be like the dog that caught the car. If you got your 3%, suddenly you have to figure out what to do with this party status going forward. And as hard as you've worked in this campaign to achieve that, I mean, the real work kind of lies ahead now with having achieved that. So what should we be expecting from the United Independent Party?
I'm really excited about where we are. I mean, this has been a whole deliberate process. If you had asked me a year ago, what would we be doing, I'd be able to tell you the same thing I'm telling you now. So we got to get people enrolled in the party. State law is not friendly to new independent parties. It says you got to get 3% of the vote in an election, which we did, which was hard. We worked hard to earn those 71,000 votes.
Right.
But you have to do that again in another statewide election. The one in 2016, the only statewide race will be for president. We don't anticipate having a presidential candidate. The other way you keep your status is by having 1% of registered voters be enrolled in the party. So we've already started, and once Secretary Galvin releases the new forms that have the checkbox on them, we'll be able to do it even more aggressively. And of course, now that there will apparently be online voter registration possible to enroll people, we got to get tens of thousands of new people enrolled in this party, and then doing all the legal process and structure, because we're going to be running a lot of candidates in 2016 in those legislative races. So we got a lot of work ahead of us.
So tell me about the 2016. What are the sort of thoughts? What sort of areas would you be sort of targeting? I'm sort of thinking of there was an election after Romney was elected governor when he claimed he was going to field this enormous slate, and they had, I think, more than 100 Republicans run across the state in a lot of seats that had gone uncontested, and it was a huge disaster for him, and a lot of people felt like it was kind of more of a show of force than a really strategic one, and that they should have picked 5 or 10 areas and sort of started to build slowly. So I don't imagine you're going to be like fielding candidates in 50 or 100 seats. And are you thinking strategically? Are there particular areas that you think are going to be friendly to a candidate?
Well, there's a lot of places across the state, and we've already had more than 20 people reach out to us to say they want to run in this party, and we'll be going through the process of picking out who the right people are and the right places. But this campaign has always been different in the sense that this has truly been a grassroots effort. We've been building this from the ground up, and in doing that, you find those places and many of those people, and that's continuing even today as we continue with this process with the United Independent Party. You can look at the poll numbers. You can see places where we did better than others. We were pretty much close to 3% as a baseline everywhere in the state, and there were places like the Pioneer Valley and in the Berkshires where we had much higher support than that. Those are obvious places where you'd expect to see us have an impact. But there's really no place in the state where I met people where they were like, you know what, we don't need new independent leadership. We don't need something that represents something outside of the same old left-right debate where I know what's going to happen if we elect someone from this party or the other one into the legislature. I want to hear people talk in real ways about that. So wherever there are people that are like that want to find a home, that are able to say, I want to get into the system in some way and make meaningful change, you're going to see candidates running. But I think that's an interesting point about the Romney thing, because that is a little bit more like what we've seen with this kind of top-down. It's like by force of huge amounts of money and huge amounts of just putting people in places, just by osmosis, we win. Voters aren't looking for that anymore. They want people that are willing to do the really, really hard work of engaging with them, of listening to them, and that's what we're going to be doing.
All right, great. Well, thanks for chatting with us, Evan. We'll stay tuned for the party's activities going ahead.
It's going to be fun. We'll see you on Twitter. We'll see you on Facebook. We'll see you. We'll hang out on Google, maybe in real life one day.
All right, great.
Thanks
again.
All right, take care.